It's ETF week, or at least that's what we're told to believe. And I wanted to do a bit more of a, hopefully more tested analysis here as to what to kind of expect for Bitcoin specifically, if the ETF is indeed approved, maybe even this week, and what that kind of means for the market, as I've gotten so many messages on social media, through my phone, all sorts of venues, that people like really want to short this thing right now. And fair enough, maybe there's good reason for that. But I wanted to go in with kind of like a fresh set of eyes and go over just, examples that we can perhaps reference, and then go over some actual statistics, actual things that actually matter at the end of this video, a little bit less relevant to that topic. Anyways, other than that, I want to welcome you back to the Krown Crypto channel. Please remember to like and subscribe and herp your derp. Like the video if you want to like the video, hate the video if you want to hate the video as well. It's all good. All right, sweet. So we are going to run with this assumption that Bitcoin is going to get an ETF. It doesn't really matter like when it actually happens, but let's say that it gets approved this week, for example's sake. Well, that is a major assumption. So that has obviously not happened just yet. It seems very, very likely. Yes, indeed. But at the end of the day, I don't know that that's going to essentially happen like, today or tomorrow or anything like that. It actually kind of sounds like it got soft approved on Friday when we made that video, to be fair. But it is an assumption nonetheless, because it has not been, actually approved. So when we go throughout the history of Bitcoin, there are two major events that rhyme with this current one, in the sense that we do see a traditional market acceptance, I should say, of some sort of Bitcoin related product. And the first one, and the most recent one, was of course back on over here for Coinbase's IPO. Now, there is something that just really blows my mind about this whole topic of conversation that I've not seen anyone bring up just yet. Not that I really spend a lot of time watching other people, but I just haven't really seen it spoken about across the lands. And it is this: there is a difference between the time when something is approved and when something gets fucking listed. For trading. For example, Coinbase, the IPO was announced on March 9th of the year 2021. It didn't start actually trading until April 14th of the year 2021. And if we want to actually go over this, do I even have this up over here? I had the page up over there before I left, but anyways, that's beside the point. I was going to show you this is when it actually was. Doesn't matter, the news on it. Anyways, so my point here is that there was about a little bit more than a month time between the announcement and the actual date itself that it actually started trading. And throughout that time, Bitcoin traded up to the next major high, about 17.5%. So, significant. I mean, that's a differential between about $55,000 all the way up to a high of just shy of $65,000. So, $10,000 almost right there. It's kind of big in my opinion. And of course, Bitcoin did top on the day. Well, kind of topped on the day right here on the 14th of that listing, before playing out, a very significant pullback. It's not a pullback. This is a fucking crash, right? This was a 55% move to the downside after that. And then yes, Bitcoin did march on for a new high actually later on. But that did take a little bit more than a year, from April of 2020, or sorry, not more than a year, about half a year, from April 2021 to November of 2021. So, it still matters. I mean, you can't just hold through a 55% downside. I mean, you could hold through it, but it's not the best. But you get my point. Anyways, there's another major event that is very similar to this as well. This one, I would even say, pertains more to a Bitcoin ETF, just because it is Bitcoin centric, and that was, of course, Bitcoin CME futures. It was also SIBO futures as well, listed at the same time, and I think they even released options too, although they got rid of that pretty damn fast. But again, the announcement was on the 31st of October 2017, when Bitcoin was trading at $6,400. And the actual listing date, the first day of trading, was Monday, the 18th of December of that same year. Now, throughout that time, Bitcoin had a tremendous rally, really, to the tune of almost 200%. So that's significant, basically a 3x from the announcement to the actual trading date. And again, once it started trading, it actually topped the day before. It actually did top the day before Sunday. So what can we deduce from this? Two major events throughout Bitcoin's history, the only two that really are kind of comparable to what we're potentially looking at here, although an ETF is a bigger deal, pound for pound, no doubt about that. But the only two relatable events had two things in common. One, the time between the announcement and the actual listing date, there was a rally. The lowest one that we did see was about 17%, a little bit above 17%. And two, the market topped for a good amount of time. In this case, it was a cycle top. In this case over here is kind of like I guess you call this like a mid-cycle top. I don't know. Well, it's not really like a mid-cycle top, but a major top, close enough to the all-time high, basically. So what can we say about that? Well, let's say that the ETF does get approved this week, for example. Would we expect Bitcoin to basically rally up between now and the actual listing date? Yes. How much time transpires between the announcement of approval and the listing date? Nobody fucking knows. I know that a lot of people just think it's going to be like the next few days. Maybe it is. But that's kind of unlikely. I mean, usually these things take time. I wouldn't be surprised to see it, get approved like in January or maybe even this week, and then start trading maybe the first day of Q2 of 2024. Definitely possible, like in April, I guess. But the time between the announcement and the actual listing, that's when I would expect Bitcoin to continue on with this rally, if it is going to continue at all, assuming that there is an approval to begin with, because that's a major assumption. I mean, it's still not actually done, even though people make it sound like it's very, very close, and it probably is very, very close, but still, it is an assumption, and that needs to be spoken about like ad fucking nauseum. So let's say, like, what if Bitcoin rallied? Let's say it got announced today, Bitcoin trading like mid 43, something like that, and it rallied up like 17%, kind of similar to what we did see for the Coinbase IPO. Well, that would put Bitcoin just above $50,000, right at the 786 fib right there. We do have a few other models kind of pointing in the similar direction there as well. So it kind of makes sense on it, on just like a quick wick to the upside, and then slam it down when, it actually starts trading. And at that point, maybe we do get that 25 to 40% pullback, crash, whatever the fuck you want to call it, that we've been speaking on this channel, is likely in this first quarter, or to begin in this first quarter of the year 2024. We've been speaking about that again since November, and I want to continue to remind myself on this channel to talk about it, maybe even remind you of the likelihood of it as well, as things do go onwards and forwards here, just because that don't want to get carried away in this next in this next move, if there is going to be another move to the upside. That's my main point, even though that is significant. Again, 17% move to the upside, very much significant, back above $50,000, or even around $50,000 for that matter. Of course, if we did see, I'm not really looking for like a 3x. I think those days are kind of over, but it wouldn't be like too crazy to see around $50,000 on an announcement like that, like between the announcement date and the actual listing date, which can be some time. Anyways, moving onwards and forwards here through my notes. Okay, we got the assumptions right. We got we spoke about the pullback. Yes. Okay. We spoke about yep. All right. Differential, yes. Okay, we got all that. Let's go into some actual statistics, some actual shit that actually matters. And first and foremost, Monday is the most volatile day for Bitcoin, both the upside and the downside, giving the largest positive and negative returns, despite having a slight, or I would say a decent favor in terms of closing negatively on Monday. Of all Mondays in Bitcoin's history, 43.75% of them did close negatively, for an average loss of about 2.25%. And on the times that it did print positively, just above 2.66. So in this case, what does that give us a range? This is probably assuming that there isn't going to be an announcement, because I imagine there'd probably be bigger swings than this. But to the upside, that'd give you an average high of about $45,000. To the downside, that would give you a closing low of just below 43. So, not super interesting right there, but still more or less, unless if it's to the upside, it'd be still more or less range bound. Moving on from there, do we have anything else? Yes, we do. Okay, so this is the big one for me, and this is likely the one that's gonna forecast before, if possible, the likelihood of an ETF approval or not. And again, it's a 2-day time frame volatility versus stochastic momentum signature. I'm going to continue to go over this until it actually does fire off, just because it's going to be one of the better ways to get this from like a non-subjective standpoint. In this case, the 2-day time frame is closing tonight. The direction of the 2-day time frame stochastic oscillator is going to be what I'm going to generally favor until we see volatility expansion, thus confirming this setup for somewhere around anywhere between a 15 to a 30% move, basically, which again, that's kind of similar towards if it does happen to the upside, close to $50,000. But in this case, the 2-day time frame will actually turn back onto the upside if Bitcoin does close above 43,700 today. So 16 hours, 22 minutes, and 48 seconds, and ticking left to go. Is a long time, obviously, but and Bitcoin's just a ball sack here above that pivot as of right now. But as long as Bitcoin is above it, going to generally favor the upside because volatility can come in very fucking quickly. And if Bitcoin does go below it, then going to have to favor the downside, I suppose. Maybe that comes along with a ETF delay, or who knows, or whatever the fuck. It doesn't really matter. But what I will say about this particular one is that the 2-day time frame, stochastic oscillator does look pretty weak here still. And if Bitcoin does close below 43.7, that is going to really start to favor the downside, just because the 5-day time frame is, in more of a toppy position as well. It's not the best way to be using stochastic oscillator, but I do notice that the 2-day and the 5-day traditionally move together. Actually, they a lot of the time they do move together. That is when those nicer moves come in. And again, on average, these sort of setups with volatility this low on a 2-day time frame, you're looking at like a mid 20% move with a standard deviation of 10%. So upper teens to maybe even as much as 37%. For like a high probability range of moves. I think it's probably gonna be on the lower end of that if it's to the upside. So 17%. Or even 20%, from that base low would put Bitcoin around $50,000. If we were to see it come to the downside, I think it could be on the upper end of that, as we've gone over before. 20% to the downside puts Bitcoin at 3650, something like that, or 36,500, I should say. 30% puts Bitcoin back down around $32,000. And referencing yesterday's video, there is actually decent reason to believe that Bitcoin could very easily come back down actually to somewhere around $30,000 in this pre-halving correction. So I do want to keep my eye on that. But assuming that an ETF is approved, yeah, I would be looking very likely for at least another major wick higher, somewhere to the tune of like 10 to 20%. Most likely, and then slam it down as things get listed. So timing these things is very, very difficult. It's always obvious in hindsight. You're going to get a lot of opinions about this on crypto YouTube, crypto Twitter, crypto Reddit, whatever the fuck, I'm sure. But hopefully this was in some way helpful, just because, a lot of these, they miss a lot of details, I think. Anyways, is there any other chart that I have here? Yeah, we do have the daily HPDR bands, as always, one of my favorite charts of all time. We can see that as of right now, Bitcoin is trading below the median, and the median is actually all the way up, basically at the closing highs of this current formation at 44,700, or a little bit below there. So as long as Bitcoin is below there, kind of have to also favor, I guess, the downside, but this is not like a conclusive thing as of right now. It's more or less trading sideways within this range, and the range is stepping up overall, and I do look at that as generally a more of a bullish thing than not. So fair enough. With the high side of the 50% of historic returns range highs at 47,650. Anyways, okay, I think we've gotten through everything now. A little bit deeper into this video than probably what I should have done, but all good. We can go look at CME, I guess, tier 2. CME is actually still above the median, actually, as well. So a little bit of hopium, and if I had to call it, I do think that Bitcoin likely has one more of those wicks to the upside. Again, this is basically assuming that there is going to be an ETF approval, but fair enough. We'll let the market tell us at the end of the day. We have the critical areas to be aware of. Again, this chart over here, I think is going to hold a lot of weight in terms of just understanding where the probabilities start to increase in favor of which side. For right now, again, 16 hours, 18 minutes left to go. 36,700 is kind of the number to beat, and it's not even going to be for tonight. It's also going to be, you need to really see two closers, two consecutive periods where it remains above that pivot for a higher probability move. But for right now, yeah, that's really all that I have to say. So hopefully we get resolution on this situation very soon. I think that it is going to be very soon, whether it's positive or negative in terms of an approval or denial or postpone it. All of them are going to have their own scenarios, of course. But this week does seem, like things are set up in that way, just with the way that volatility is looking right now, very, very low. You do expect things to be more or less very quiet coming into these things. And I think there's also some economic events this week as well. So lots of reason for the markets to move. And again, this is kind of the big one for me, as far as just having a number, at least for today, and then whatever it updates to over the next couple of days, for kind of governing, which side is more likely for resolution. And we are talking about a decent move here. So I'll leave things right there. As always, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow with maybe another piece of the puzzle and also likely a live stream as well. All right, take care. See you soon.